Hi everyone, welcome to ReachIvy's webinar with our partner MPOWER Finance on exploring loans, jobs and visas for US colleges. ReachIvy is a premium study abroad and career guidance advisory. Our experts help aspiring students get accepted into Ivy Leagues and other top-ranked schools globally. I am Delia, the Chief Student Officer at ReachIvy. With me today, I have the MPOWER team, Yasmin, Rohan, and Anantya joining me. Over to you, Yasmin, for a quick round of introductions.
Sure. So my name is Yasmin. I am on the marketing team here at MPOWER. I've been here for about 2 years before I was pursuing my bachelor's degree at George Washington University in DC. And just a quick background on MPOWER, we provide student loans for international students who plan on studying in the US. And I think what makes us a little bit different is, we don't require credit scores, co-signers. We have a very forward-looking credit model. Over to you, Anantya.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anantya. I'm originally from Bangalore and pretty much grew up there my whole life before coming over to Tufts in Boston. So I am and very recently was an international student and got a bachelor's in economics and history before moving on and getting a job at MPOWER Financing. I find myself quite fortunate to have gotten this job. It's leadership. It's a rotational program, so I've been in a bunch of different departments and had some great experience working with people like Yas and Rohan.
Thanks, Anantya. Hey guys, my name is Rohan Tibrawala. I, like Anantya, was an international student in the US. When I came to the US to study, it was actually my first trip to the US ever. I graduated many years ago from the Wharton school, where I did my undergrad in accounting and management. I'm currently the country director for MPOWER Financing. Prior to MPOWER, I worked in a retail apparel brand and was an investment banking analyst with JP Morgan in New York. I've been keenly engaged with the University of Pennsylvania's various strategic and admission efforts in India through the alumni associations and interview committee. One thing I want to let everyone know right from the beginning is that everyone who's part of this webinar today and part of the larger MPOWER team, they're all very passionate and committed to what we do. And we are a very mission-aligned company in terms of removing financial barriers and providing educational access to international students from over 180 different countries to study at more than 200 universities across the US. Just in terms of how the webinar is structured, this is a live webinar that we're hosting. So we actually have people, ReachIvy and I are currently in India, and we have Yasmin and Anantya joining from the US, from Washington, DC. We'll try and keep this as lively and open as possible. We're going to focus on 4 primary topics during the webinar. The first will just be on various financing and funding options that MPOWER has and can help you with when you're looking at studying in the US. The second is we'll talk a little bit about some of the technical aspects of the loan and how you should assess a loan, whether it's an MPOWER loan or a loan from another lender. And then we'll just have a general conversation on what the visa procedure is and on jobs, where we'll talk from our own personal experience. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the comment box that you can see. In case we don't get through to it, you can always email us or reach out to us through ReachIvy, and we'll be more than happy to share all this information with you. And finally, in case you want during the webinar, feel free to also browse our website, mpowerfinancing.com, where you can get more information about who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Sorry, Delia, back to you.
Thanks, Rohan. So without further ado, let's get this started with common questions we've got about financing and funding a US education. So Yasmin, students often find financing international education a major challenge. Thus, it's great to have organizations like MPOWER actually guide students through the whole process. So where can one learn about MPOWER financing?
Sure. A few different ways. One, as Rohan just mentioned, we have a great website. It has a lot of information on it, what makes us different, why choose MPOWER over another lender, whether or not it's a good fit for you. So that's one way. Another is, ask us questions. We're here for you and we'll answer whatever questions you have. And we're also available via email, phone, chat, WhatsApp, and we have an India and a US office. So basically anytime you have a question, we are likely available to answer it.
Great. So Anantya, what's the application process for a loan like?
Sure. So it's largely a three-step application process. The first one is visiting our website and checking your eligibility. Should you be eligible? So should you be attending one of our partner schools? You can then fill out the application, which is 4 easy steps. You ask for some basic information on yourself, your education background, your work experience, and some details on how you plan to finance your entire degree. Once you do that, our underwriting team will get back to you with a decision within 2 or 3 days. And should you be conditionally approved, or they might want more information, we'll ask you to submit some documents essentially to validate the information you've already provided to us. After that, we'll be able to turn around and give you your final loan approval within a short number of days.
Ilya, I'll just add a couple of points to that as well, if that's okay. Thanks, Anantya, for answering that. I also want to let people know that we're a completely online company. So from checking your eligibility to applying for the loan to actually getting your approval to disbursement of funds and repayment of that loan, the entire process is completely online. We don't require anyone to visit a branch or wait in line or any of that. Along with that, the admission process is completely free and completely fast. So let me just explain those two very quickly and as clearly as possible. So when I say free, I mean that we don't have any upfront fees that we charge. So you can actually apply for one of our loans and get your decision, get your approval and your support letter, even sign all of the documents without payment of any sort whatsoever. We don't ask for any of the bank detail of your bank details, your credit card details, or any of that. Having said that, there is a small origination fee that we do charge, but that is only charged at the end of the process when the funds are dispersed directly from MPOWER to your university. And instead of actually paying that as a one-time fee, it's actually added on to the cost of the loan. And because our loans have a repayment period of up to 12.5 years, it's going to be paid by that student over 12.5 years. So in that sense, it's completely free. We don't require you to make, we don't charge any insurance charges. We don't have any insurance charges or any of that. We have those benefits, but it's a free process with no upfront fee that's required to be paid. And on the fast part, I want to say that this is actually one of the unique benefits and major advantages that MPOWER provides. The way I describe it is 30, 30, and 3. So it takes about 30 seconds for a student to check his or her eligibility on our platform. When I say eligibility, I primarily mean that if they're eligible to apply for one of our loans, and the criteria there is very simple. It's as long as you're graduating in the next 2 years and that you're attending one of the over 200 universities that we partner with. So the eligibility criteria takes about 30 seconds. We have a very basic and easy application process that can take about 30 minutes for you to complete. And once we've received a completed application, more often than not, we're able to give you a decision within 3 business days. So along with Anantya's answer, I wanted to let the students know that the MPOWER process is both free and fast.
Great. So, Anantya, do students have any challenges to ensure disbursement of the loan amount to the school?
No, so we actually handle that entire piece ourselves in-house. We have a dedicated university relations team that works with schools and a fund management team to ensure that your funds are getting to the school in a timely manner. And so unlike other lenders who might deposit the funds to your account and expect you to send it over to the respective college, we'll actually handle that entirely in-house.
All right. And Rohan, if you could share, what are the top pros and cons for borrowing with MPOWER Financing?
Sure, Delia. Before we do that, I wanted to actually spend a little bit more time on talking about, what Yasmin had mentioned earlier about what are the channels that one can use to interact with MPOWER Financing. And we'll have Yasmin discuss some of the documentation because from a student who had both a loan in India and a loan in the US when I was studying, I know that the process can be very different, can be chalk and cheese. I'll spend a few minutes just on talking about some of the channels that we use to interact with students and that students can use to interact with us. So, like Yasmin had initially mentioned, we obviously have we're an online company, so the main portal that one should use is our website. On the website, we have very detailed information about all aspects of the loan, from applying to what we look at to repayment to interest rates, and also in terms of servicing and how we help international students. Apart from this, we obviously partner with organizations like ReachIvy to reach out to students through webinars like we conduct, emails that we share with them, and also information sessions that we hold in person. And we've done these information sessions in Delhi, Bangalore, and Bombay in the recent past, and hope to do more of these in the upcoming months. Along with that, I think we want to make sure that we're available for the students as per their convenience. For that, we actually started a small WhatsApp group, which is now has close to about 150 participants, where students actually ask questions both about MPOWER in general, about who we are, what we do, what the benefits are, and any other question that they may have. And along with that, questions that they have about maybe specifically about their application. So we've realized that especially in a country like India, it's important to be available on WhatsApp. We are actually in the process of starting a WhatsApp business channel. So that will be another channel available on WhatsApp that students can use to communicate with us. Along with that, like Yasmin had said earlier, that we have a chat window that's available on our website, and students can always call us. We have an India number that they can call us on, and there's a US number as well, depending on where they are and what they're convenient with. And then finally, the most common and easiest way of communicating is over email. We're a small team, but we are growing very quickly, and we try and respond to queries regardless of the channel as fast as possible. So just wanted to let everyone know that in case we haven't addressed some of your concerns, or you have questions post this webinar, feel free to reach out to us and share our information with your friends and family. And just to talk a little bit more about the loan, Yaz, do you want to talk a little bit, because you deal with students and on the marketing side, about how challenging is it to provide the documents that are required for confirming the loan and to process the loan?
Well, I think it kind of depends on how organized you are. So it's not challenging in the sense that all of these documents you already have. So, for example, we ask for your undergraduate transcript if you're applying for a grad program. So we'll ask you to submit that. We'll ask you to submit your resume. what are some other documents? Any type of financial information you have in terms of like other loans you had taken out, what you plan on taking out and what your expenses will look like when you start school. So that's all information that you already have. But I think what can slow you down in the process is if you don't have it ready while you're applying. So it means, you'll have to save your application, go find it on your computer, then resubmit. So sometimes it can take a little bit longer if you're not prepared. So we can, I'm sure we can send you a list via email of all of the documents you need. Otherwise, it's on our website. And then, one thing that we do help with is receiving an I-20. So once you submit a completed application with all of your documentation, we're able to offer a support letter. And then, basically that support letter can help you receive an I-20, which will then help you get a student visa. So we will ask for documentation of that once you receive it. So long story short, it's not so difficult as it is just making sure that you have everything ready in a timely manner.
Great, Yasmin. So you pretty much answered our question about how one can use it for an I-20 and US visa as well. Rohan, if you could tell us a little about how this experience was.
Sure. I think one of the biggest concerns that students have after they've applied and after they've been admitted is financing. Like we all know, and me from personal experience, and Delia, I know from a lot of your students who go through you to the premier schools in the US, that financing US education is not cheap. It's an expensive proposition. However, what I encourage students to do and parents also to do is look at it as an investment rather than as an expense. One of the things that MPOWER does, especially compared to and better than local lenders, local banks here in India, and maybe other student lenders, is that we are able to provide you with a conditional offer letter and a conditional approval letter without any. One is based on a new application process, actually without submission of any documents, and always without any fees, fines, any fees or charges. So when you apply for a loan with us, like Anantya had mentioned, once you've completed the application, we'll go through the process, and the credit team in the US will make a decision. Once they've made a decision, we'll send you a support letter completely free of cost. And students use that support letter both for receiving their I-20 and also subsequently for their US visa. I think this is a unique ability that we have and a benefit that we provide to students, because we believe that we should be helping them as much as possible. The general tendency in India is to actually, from traditional lenders, is to charge an application fee or a processing fee, which is non-refundable, before they actually provide you with any of the terms and conditions of the loan and also the loan letter. However, MPOWER being a fintech company based in the US, we actually, like you mentioned, do not charge to provide you a loan letter, which you can use for your I-20 and for the US visa. I think this also goes back to what Yasmin had just mentioned about documents that are required, that they're actually very easily and clearly listed on our website. Unlike Indian banks, where they themselves may not know why they need what they need, it's actually, we clearly state what we need, why we need it, and how we use it. And for anyone who's applied to the US, most of the documents that we require will be, fairly easily available with you.
Great. So Rohan, are there any other, pros and cons for borrowing with MPOWER Financing, which you would like to mention?
Sure. There are a couple of. I actually think it's a great product. We are able to lend up to $50,000 to students wanting to study at more than 200 universities. across the US. I think the fact that we are a startup and we're growing and growing very quickly, we try to lend less to more students. So one thing that we're working on, and hopefully we'll do sooner rather than later, is try and increase the amount that we're able to lend to students. However, I want to also mention that the funds that we provide can be used for any and all university-related expenses, including off-campus housing, textbooks, third-party insurance, and any other expenses that students may have. I think another, I wouldn't say con, but another area of improvement for us is because we're a new company, we're trying to build our brand, we're trying to educate the people both here in India and across the world, because we lend to 180 different countries. So a lot of people are slightly hesitant initially when they hear about MPOWER, and they hear it's completely online and that we're based in the US. So I think it's through events like these, through webinars and partnerships like with ReachIvy, and having both Anantya and Yasmin be a part of this webinar from the US, that helps build that trust, helps clear doubts, and provide information and details to students. So I think those would probably be two of the areas of improvement that we have, that we are working on. I think we have a very unique product that's actually not available with anyone else, especially in India, because of the fact that our loan product is always without collateral, co-signer, co-applicant, co-borrower. So in other words, it's completely unsecured. What we are analyzing is we're analyzing the student's future earning potential, and we're able to make a decision based on that. So I think that's actually one of the biggest advantages that we have as a online US lender, that we really don't care if your father owns a piece of land or has an apartment, or you have gold or jewelry or any sort of traditional collateral that Indian banks ask, because we are able to assess you as a student. We take into account your, like Yasmin said, your undergraduate transcript, your standardized test scores. So we assess you as a student, and based on that, we're able to give you a loan that's without collateral, co-signer, co-applicant, co-borrower. Along with that, I think we have a very competitive fixed discounted rate of interest of 10.49% for graduate, postgraduate students. And this is comparable to, if not cheaper than, most of the options that are available to students going to the US to study. I'd encourage people to go to our website, learn more about how we charge this interest and why we charge it. We'll talk a little bit more about it later on during this webinar as well. And finally, I think the fact that it's a completely online process makes it very easy for students to check their eligibility and take their application forward. They're absolutely allowed to cancel their application if they don't want to take it forward without any fees, fines, penalties, charges whatsoever. And also, if they do take a loan from us, we don't charge any repayment, prepayment, and repayment penalties. So these are some of the advantages that we have, along with many more that we will share with you during this webinar and that are on our website. Lastly, one thing also, Delia, I'd like to mention is that one of the things that we are improving on is expanding outside of the US. So currently, we only do over about 250 schools in the schools. By schools, I mean colleges and universities in the United States. But we are slowly and steadily expanding to Canada, and hopefully before the end of the year should have something set up there to help students wanting to go to Canada as well. So that was very briefly, some of the advantages and benefits that MPOWER provides to students wanting to go and study in the US.
Thanks, Rohan. So coming to the next segment of today's webinar, we'd like to explain to our students the true cost of what their loan entails. So over to you, Rohan.
Sure. Thanks. So one of the issues that that we encounter on a regular basis is students end up comparing just simply what interest are, and if they think that they have a lower rate of interest that they have a better loan. What we're trying to do is educate students on other aspects of the loan that they should be considering. And Anantya, who's part of the team, will actually lead this section of the webinar and talk to you more about what the true cost of a student loan is. For this part of the webinar, because we have a few numbers involved, there is a small presentation that we have, and I'm going to share my screen for that right now. Anantya, give me a second while we share it, and then I'll hand it over to you and Delia to take this forward.
Sure. Thanks, Rohan.
Hey guys, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. Over to you, Delia and Anantya.
Great. So, Anantya, a couple of questions here. Firstly, why should the rate of interest on your student loan not be the only factor for assessing its cost?
Sure. So what we try to explain to our borrowers is that the rate of interest you're quoted up front is actually not the primary factor that is going to drive cost. There's several other factors that impact your rate of interest and how much you're going to be paying across the life of your loan. So one of them, and one of the simplest ones that Rohan mentioned, is interest rate discounts. Is that a lot of borrowers like ourselves offer you discounts. So the rate that you're quoted up front is not the rate that you're going to be paying over a majority of your loan. The second one is the hidden dangers of variable interest rates. I'm going to talk about this in a couple of slides, but essentially these are interest rates which are linked to some sort of an index that can fluctuate with the market. So these rates can be vastly different through the life of your loan as well. The third point is the economics of interest capitalization, which is essentially whenever you don't pay interest on a loan during so-called grace periods and things like that, that's not free money. That's actually money that's going to be added to your principal balance. You're going to have to pay a higher principal once you exit that period. And then the last point is much simpler one, is the impact of longer term loan. So longer term loan, it of course will lower the monthly payments, but it will more often than not increase the total interest and the total financing charge across the life of your loan.
Great, Anantya. So if you could elaborate a little more on these four aspects which you just shared.
Sure. So the first one is interest rate discounts. So MPOWER, as Rohan said, MPOWER offers up to 1.5% in interest rate discount. The first 0.5% can be earned right off the bat. You sign up for autopay. So instead of going online every month and a certain day and actually paying your loan, it's a very simple way. You sign up, you can opt in, opt out whenever you want, and you'll automatically make payments on your MPOWER loan, which is anyway something that you want to be doing. The second one is securing a job after graduation. So providing us with proof that you found a job and that you graduated, which the caliber of borrowers that we tend to have, this turns out to be not a problem at all. And then, the second one rather is actually making 6 consecutive payments on your loan while you're on autopay. And then the third one is finding a job and securing it after graduation. So all of these three add up to 1.5% in interest rate discounts, which takes your loan to about 10.49% for the majority of your payments. So this stands in contrast to what we call a variable rate loan. Our loan is fixed. At each point, you know what rate you're paying, and that rate is not going to change due to any external market factors. A variable rate loan, on the other hand, is comprised of two components. One is the variable base rate, which allows the lender to price in macroeconomic risk. This is usually linked to some interest rate index, such as LIBOR. And then there's the fixed margin, which is used to price the borrower risk. So this is the fixed part of the loan, and you should only assess the risk of the borrower paying back. As I said, one of the common indices that lenders use for the base rate is called LIBOR, the London Interbank Offer Rate. This is set in London through sort of voting mechanism between some of the biggest banks in the world. And it's one of the mainstay benchmark rates that lenders use to price their loans. So as you can see, LIBOR has varied a lot over the last decade or so, and pretty much increases and peaks at any crisis. So the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s, the financial crisis in 2008, And since then, if you took out a LIBOR benchmark loan, you actually had a pretty good time. LIBOR rates were sub 1%. But as you can see, in the last 1 year, this index has shot up a lot. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about how a LIBOR loan can actually affect, a LIBOR benchmark loan can affect your payments. So here's an example of a $20,000 loan taken out in September 2017, so last fall. And I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison of a LIBOR benchmark loan and a fixed rate loan. With a LIBOR benchmark loan, let's presume that you have LIBOR plus 8.5%. September 17, LIBOR was 1.3%. So you would have had a rate of 9.8%. Whereas with MPOWER, presumably you signed up for autopay, you would have availed your first discount and gone to 11.49. In April of this year, LIBOR shot up by 1 whole percentage point to 2.3. So now your rate would have been 10.8%. With MPOWER, you would have already made 6 consecutive payments at 10.99. In November of next year, which is when you would have gradually start repaying the loan, where's LIBOR going to be? Well, that's your best guess, and it totally depends on you. With us, we can tell you where your rate's going to be, and that's 10.49%. Let's look at a bunch of different scenarios of where LIBOR could go and what the rate would, what the finance charge would be, so the total amount of interest you're paying. So at a rate of 2%, LIBOR would be just over 18,600, and ours would be 18,850. So, you know, in that case, a LIBOR loan is a little bit cheaper, but at 2.3% and above, or any rate above 2% really, a LIBOR benchmark loan is more expensive. So when you're evaluating these types of products, when you're evaluating a variable rate loan, it's really based on your own risk tolerance and what you think is going to happen with the market. If you're willing to start off with a lower rate, which often happens with variable rate loans, and you know you're okay with the risk of the benchmark increasing, then maybe that's the solution for you. But if you're more risk averse and you want to know your rate, you don't have clarity on what you're going to be paying every month, then you've got the product for you.
And Anantya, I think there was a point that you had mentioned a few days ago about the risk being transferred in a fixed interest rate loan and a variable interest rate loan from the borrower to the lender. Is it possible for you to just quickly go over that as well?
Sure, I believe that should be in the next slide.
Oh, sure, great.
Yeah, in a fixed rate loan, what we like to say is that the risk burden is on us. So, you know, if the financing charge increases, we are the one who's going to absorb that risk. So we're not going to have any interest rate increases, only decreases due to your discounts, and your monthly payments do not change. With a variable rate loan, however, if you recall, I said that the base rate is used to price macroeconomic risk. That macroeconomic risk is transferred onto the borrower. Ultimately, if LIBOR goes from 2% to 5%, that's entirely going to be on the borrower's shoulders to make up those extra payments. But the lending company itself will be okay. So what this results is you're susceptible to unpredictable interest rate fluctuations, and your monthly payments can change drastically. They can also be a lot lower should rates decrease. If rates are increasing as they currently are, then they could spike quite a bit.
Great. So Anantya, if you could also throw a little light on the economics of, interest capitalization.
Sure. So I believe that's in the next slide, earlier.
Fine.
So requiring interest-only payments during school and for 6 months after graduation, this offers several benefits. One of them is that you have a consistent cost of borrowing. Why does that happen? Is because, well, actually you're going to have a lower cost as you continue paying because of our interest rate discounts that happen through the life of your loan. But the second piece, which is a little bit tougher to understand, is when you pay interest on your loan, you're preventing your interest from capitalizing. So you're making sure that your principal balance stays the same. Let's move on to the next slide so I can explain the economics of that. So let's presume that you take out a $20,000 loan with a 5% origination, September 17. Let's look at an MPOWER loan, which is fixed and of course, which has requires you to make in-school payments. You make those $200 payments in school. A lot of our borrowers do this by utilizing the 20 hours to work on campus. And after graduation, your principal is exactly the same. The competitor loan, they do offer you an advantage up front, which you might have to pay no interest in school. However, that's not free money. All of that interest is going to add up, and that lump sum is going to be added to your principal balance once you graduate. So now your loan has gone from 21,000 to 26,200. So your repayment after graduation is shot up, and therefore the total financing charge that you have is also $4,000 more. So, not paying interest can be a financial burden. However, we do understand that a lot of students are in situations where they can't pay interest. So we do have options to work with you during that in-school period as well, to make sure that your payments are lower.
And one thing, one point I'll add here, Anantya, is that we actually, because we're a US-based student lender, we provide international students the opportunity to build and grow their credit history in the US while they're studying and making these in-school payments. So that I know for me, from my personal experience, was a big issue when I came to the US, and is very important because from small things like getting a cell phone connection or renting a car to getting an apartment or moving off campus, it's important for international students to have the ability to build a credit history, and along with actually saving you interest, like Anantya has just explained, in school payments from the MPOWER loan also helps you build your credit history while you're in the US.
Thanks, Rohan. Thank you for adding that.
Great. Anantya, would you like to share anything more about the impact of longer-term goals on the whole?
So I think first what I'll do is I'll put all of these pieces together in the current slide, and I'll show you what's the impact of variable rates and capitalization. So presuming that you've got a variable rate loan, also had no interest payments during school versus our loan, which is fixed rate and requires interest payments. So again, the same scenario of LIBOR 1.3% to 2.3, your rates increase. However, this time we're going to add on the feature of you not paying interest. So if you look down in the bottom table, you can see our loans, as you know, on consistent price, you're going to be paying $18,850. Versus the competitor, you're going to be paying more than that in every single scenario, just because of the fact that you've capitalized your loan in this case, or you've capitalized interest in the loan. Now you graduate more debt, a higher repayment amount. So when you put it all together, the MPOWER loan actually stacks up quite well. Okay, so now I'll move on to what you just said a couple of slides ago, but the term of your loan and while no rate is not a cost. So the term is essentially the number of years over which you repay principal. The loan term, it impacts your finance charge, which is, as you should have gathered by now, is the sum of all the interest you pay across the life of the loan. Increasing the term usually decreases the monthly payment, but increases the total financing charge. With a simple example of how this works on the next slide. For a 10-year loan, what's the 15-year loan? With a 10-year loan, $210 payments in school, that's going to be same for both. And then when you graduate, you make $300 payments. Total financing charge is $21,286. The 15-year loan, however, again, you make 210 payments in school. After you graduate, you make lower payments, about $50 lower almost. However, you're going to be making those payments for many more years. That's going to lead to a much higher financing charge of around $30,000.
Thanks. Just one thing I wanted to point out is in the header, the total financing charges is actually close to $9,000 more and not $5,000. It's a typo that we'll correct for next time. So I think in terms of just talking about interest rates, it's very important for us to educate students, parents, and the general public as well, because there's a lot of misinformation and it's a concept that's not easily accessible or understood. So I just wanted to thank Anantya at this point of time for being patient and taking us through these numbers and hopefully convincing you and explaining to you that whether you take an MPOWER loan or another loan, that keep these factors into consideration. I'm going to stop this particular presentation right now and then head back to the live webinar, and we'll talk briefly about jobs and visas, and then take it forward from there.
Thanks, Anantya, for that session. Coming to the next section, we'd like to learn a little more about visa applications. So, Rohan, if you could throw a little light on, how you prepared for your visa interview, the documents you needed, and, what did you do on the day of the interview?
Sure. Thanks, Zelia. I think one of the major concerns that students have, at least at this point of time, is applying for and preparing for their visa. And I know it was the same situation with me, where I was unclear about what information I need, what documents are required to be presented, and what kind of questions I'll be asked. So what we try and do is, I think it's important for students to be prepared. I actually think one of the best resources for this, apart from reaching out to counselors like ReachIvy, is also speaking to the universities directly, or maybe even looking at sessions that are held by the US Embassy or the US Consulate in different cities, because they have visa officers talking about the whole visa process, and a lot of these sessions are usually free and very informative. For me, and I think from what I understand and know of from my experiences, they're basically trying to assess the fact that you're going to be a student who's going to be contributing and adding value. And along with that you have the resources to complete the education that you're going there for, and that you have enough support and enough to come back to your home country. They're primarily looking at answering these three questions. And as long as you have a story to tell them and information to share with them that answers these, you should be in the clear. I'd like to also mention to everyone here that even regarding visas, there is a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of wrong information and a lot of conjecture that's out there, confusing students and parents. So please do reach out to the correct authorities and the correct people, to organizations like ReachIvy, where they have a lot of information on their website as well, to get this information directly and correctly. It's an important part of the application process. And the one way that MPOWER helps you with that is, like I mentioned, we're able to issue you a conditional approval support letter that you can use both for your I-20 and for your visa. And this is provided to you, again, free of cost, over email. And you can it's on our letterhead and signed by our CEO. So the US visa experience can be a little daunting, but it's very well prescribed. So as long as you follow the steps, you check all the boxes, you should be good to go.
Great. So Rohan, what about, post the visa? What needs to be done post that?
Sure. So primarily the way the application and admission cycle works, especially to the US, is the first is obviously the application part you have to put in and you get admitted to. Once students get admitted, the two most important things that they consider after deciding where to go are financing, which we're here to help you with, and visas. Once this is over, it's important to participate and engage with in a pre-departure orientation, where they tell you about what the culture in the US is like, how it's what is it to study in a classroom with people from different nationalities, with professors who might be world class, and just give you a lot of the information tools that you require to acclimatize yourself to a foreign environment when you get to the US and arrive on campus. I'd love to hear a little from Yasmin on what her experience of studying at George Washington was like, and even Anantya, who graduated more recently.
Sure. So I think, I really enjoyed George Washington. One, because of the academics. I think, they were solid. I learned quite a bit from that perspective. But I think the other thing that I really appreciated was the fact that it was based in Washington, D.C. And what that meant for me was that I could intern while I was in school. So I did get quite a bit of work experience even before I graduated. I had an internship every semester, which I think is probably a little bit aggressive, but I think I left with enough work experience, one, where it was a little bit easier for me to find a job because I had a bigger network, but also two, I had a better sense of what I wanted to do post-graduation. I had already kind of understood, okay, like this is the type of company I want to work at. Like this is, what doesn't work for me. Do I want to work for a small company, a big company? Do I want to be doing more analytical work versus more maybe qualitative work? So I think being able to be exposed to that earlier on was something that I think I got a lot of value from. So it's just something to consider, when you're thinking about schools, is that something that you want to do, or do you want to focus more on academics? I think it's a personal decision.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Yasmin. Anantya, if I could ask you if you could share, what your current and future visa plans would be?
Sure. So I graduated last year from Tufts, and of course, as most of you know, have researched by now and would be knowledgeable about. The options are you get something called an OPT, optional practical training, which allows you, or it's a provision under your F1, which allows you to work essentially visa-free for a year. And I've done that. I'm reaching the end of this period, and I actually went through the H1B lottery about a month ago. Unfortunately, I was not successful. But fortunately, however, I work for a company like MPOWER Financing, which has done so much to help me with my visa troubles and ensure that I remain in the company. So I'm likely to return back to the Bangalore office with Rohan for a bit, and then potentially relocate to Canada or another geography where we're expanding.
Great. Rohan, if you could throw a little light on what are the OPT, CPT extension options available to students?
Sure. So one thing students should know and understand is that as an F1 student, you get 12 months of OPT, which is optional practical training. And you also get 12 months of CPT, which is curriculum practical training. The basic difference between the two is the 12 months of CPT requires you to work in a field that you're currently studying, whereas an OPT lets you engage in a field that might not be directly related to what you are studying or have studied. So this gives students the opportunity, like Anantya, to actually work in the US on the optional practical training for a period of 12 months. Anantya obviously is an undergraduate student. For graduate students who are going to the US, currently, if you're doing a STEM affiliated program, you actually get, along with the 12-month of the OPT that comes effectively free with the F1, you get the option to extend it by another 24 months. So for a lot of the students who are going to the US to pursue, an MS degree or a degree in a STEM affiliated course or program, you will actually have the option of having the ability to work in the US legally and officially for a period of 36 months, 12 months on the OPT that you already have, plus another 24 months of extension that you will receive under that program. And within that period, it's important to understand that the H-1B actually has to be applied on your behalf by your employer. A lot of students are very confused initially about how you get the H-1B and who applies for it. You cannot apply for it individually, and nor can your college apply for it on your behalf. It has to be applied for by whoever your employer is. And depending on obviously the amount of applications they receive, your chances will either be will depend on that. So I still think that it's important to be informed about the visa situation so that you can plan yourself accordingly, whether you're going for an undergraduate program or for a master's or a PhD or anything else.
Great, thanks for that, Rohan. I'd like to bring in Yasmin and Anantya. If you could share a little bit about what jobs students typically avail of lately to fund their education in top universities.
Sure. So, I kind of touched on this already, but, interning is always an option. I think what's typically easier for, and Anantya can probably speak to this a little bit more, but I think what's typically easier for students who are coming from abroad is, working on campus jobs. So typically, universities will will help students kind of find jobs, you know, at various institutions within their school. So, you know, working at the library or like one of their like finance departments. So I think there are a lot of options on that front. And I think it does kind of simplify things when you're just kind of looking for supplementary income to pay for school.
Great. And Anantya, so this one's for you. On course completion, you know, what are the current hot jobs people look for currently on campus?
So I think that, you know, I was an undergraduate, so quite different, as Rohan said. But for me, STEM majors, software engineering jobs, computer science oriented majors were just, you know, very much, or jobs rather, were very much sought after. You know, I think that when you study one of those fields, anything from, you know, engineering all the way to comp sci, you tend to be inundated with opportunities, primarily because of the benefit you have of, you know, the STEM extension. But then that said, you know, I was non-STEM, and I had also a pretty great time recruiting. I think I more than anything enjoyed myself and learned what else was out there. And so for me, who came from an econ, you know, finance, but more generalist background, I recruited with a lot of startups. I was in talks with an insurance company, and then the whole spectrum of consulting and banking jobs that are out there. Let's say in terms of what's hot, software engineering, supply chain, those types of jobs are very much in demand right now.
So Anantya, anything you'd like to add to that?
You know, nothing at all. I would say that people tend to have misgivings about, you know, what's going on in the US right now politically and climate. But I've been here for the last year. You know, personally and socially, I've had a great time. And more than anything, I think that the job market is doing quite well. There's a lot of appetite, and you know, you can work hard, and if you're regimented in your approach, which, you know, a lot of you probably are very high caliber students who will be, you will find a job. I'm confident of that.
Delia, I'll just quickly add on that. And I want to mention that Yasmin actually does a very fun and a very popular resume review option that we provide to our borrowers and our students, where they share their resumes with us. And we have Yasmin, an expert, an internal expert who looks at it and gives them advice. We also have a LinkedIn group, and we have other career resources that we provide through our blog on our website. You know, having said that, your career services on campus at your university is still the best resource, but we try and help students as much as possible, as often as possible.
Great. So Yasmin, you know, since you work extensively with students on these aspects, what according to you are the current, you know, hot jobs or the hot trends you've seen within this job sector?
I mean, I think Anantya kind of covered what I would say, but, you know, I think, you know, I think it's becoming increasingly important to kind of have at least some background in computer science. I mean, I'm in marketing, and I feel like I've had to kind of teach myself quite a bit of that. So I think kind of at least having a background in that is very helpful for most jobs.
Awesome. So that brings us to the end of this super informative webinar. I'd like to say a big thank you to Yasmin, Anantya, and Rohan for all the time and, you know, useful insights you shared with us today. Thanks so much for spending time with us at ReachIvy, and I'm sure you've reached out to a lot of students and addressed a ton of questions they've had on financing their education in the US. Thanks a ton, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.